Well, greetings from Oak Ridge National Laboratory and welcome to the Round 3 Small Business Voucher Overview. I'm awfully glad you're able to join us. The purpose of this call or this webinar is to give you a bit of a sense of what has changed in this round versus the other rounds, and a little bit of feedback on the previous 2 rounds of Small Business Voucher, and some guidance on how you can go about preparing your request for assistance for round 3. So here's an outline. So we begin with a review of the Small Business Voucher pilot goals, purpose, and background. Take a quick look at the round 2 results. Then we'll talk about the round 3 schedule and logistics. Then I want to walk through the request for assistance outline, and I'll provide some thoughts on what you can do to make your request for assistance as compelling as possible. We'll talk about the scoring then. And a big part of this webinar will focus on a revised submission process for requests for assistance. So if you've looked at the sbv.org webpage, you'll notice that the look and feel has changed a little bit. And the same is true of the interface for the applications. We transitioned from a commercially available solution to the Department of Energy's exchange program. And I think you'll find that it is a little bit easier to work with, maybe a little bit more robust, and hopefully you'll find it to be a good experience. And then we'll do question and answer. Now, the way we'll do question and answer is you'll notice on your screen, as you look at these slides, you'll see on the right that you're able to chat with the presenter. So you want to click that little button that looks like a cartoon speaking, and then you can type your questions there. And then I'll field those questions at the end of the talk, but you can feel free to enter them at any time along the way. Okay, let's begin with the goals, purpose, and background. The Small Business Voucher is a part of the Department of Energy's and EERE's Lab to Market initiative. And the goal is to increase and enhance lab private sector partnerships. So we want for the national labs to be a useful resource for companies, and we want for our national lab scientists to be effective partners for your companies. We want to increase and streamline access to the national lab capabilities, and we want to demonstrate the value of lab-developed science and technology. Now, if you're joining us as a small business, you already know this. Small businesses account for more than half of all private sector jobs, 99% of all employers, and there are 23 million small businesses that are contributing to the economy of the United States. And the Department of Energy has recognized that we need to do a better job making our national labs more accessible to small businesses. And so the Small Business Voucher Program is an attempt to do that. In rounds 1 and 2 of fiscal year 16, the department awarded $15 million in small business vouchers and has made another $12 million available for FY17. Well, why do they do that? Well, we believe that it's important for national labs to engage with small businesses, but we also recognize that there are challenges. Small businesses tell us that they simply can't afford the cost of working with a national laboratory. Small businesses say, gosh, you have nice contracts that were given to you by Congress, but really it's long and it's burdensome and it's cumbersome. So can you streamline that? And the lab system, small businesses tell us, is difficult to navigate. So we're trying to address these challenges by, first of all, taking away the cost issue. We're making funding available for about 100 vouchers over the period of this pilot. We want to streamline the back-end business practices to shorten the contracting process. And we want to implement a support network to help small businesses navigate the entire lab system by technology area. And if you go to small business or sbv.org, the webpage, that's a big part of our strategy to make what's inside the laboratories more visible and accessible. Well, as you may know, there are 17 national laboratories that are eligible to participate in small business vouchers. So any one of our national labs may have expertise that you'll find useful for a partnership. It's actually being managed in a partnership between the Department of Energy and 5 lead laboratories. So I'm coming to you from Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and our colleague labs are the Berkeley Laboratory, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Pacific Northwest Laboratory, and the Sandia National Laboratory. And these 5 laboratories are working together with the department to manage the program, but all of the laboratories are available to you. And as you go through the webpage and look for expertise that will help your company, don't in any way feel limited to the 5 labs that are identified as the lead laboratories. It is important to understand that the funding for the Small Business Voucher Program is from the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office of the Department of Energy. And the dollars that are made available are allocated by Congress. And so we have to ensure that the work that we perform under these vouchers is consistent with the funding that came from Congress. So we are limited to the following technology areas, which are EERE's mission space, and that's advanced manufacturing, bioenergy, buildings, fuel cells, geothermal, solar, water power, wind, and vehicles. And if you go to sbb.org, you can see more detailed descriptions of what we mean by those technology areas. But what kind of work can be done for you? Well, certainly prototyping, materials characterization, high performance computations, modeling and simulations, intermediate scaling to generate samples for potential customers, validation of technology performance, and designing ways to satisfy regulatory compliance. So these are the kinds of things that you might ask for when you put together your request for assistance. And I do need to correct one thing that I said a bit earlier. There actually are 12 national laboratories that have capabilities within the EERE mission space that are participating, and we hope we'll be able to cast a wider net in the future. Okay, let's talk about the round 2 results. So for round 1 and round 2, and in round 1, 33 small businesses were selected, and in round 2, 43 small businesses were selected. 40% of the companies that applied for small business vouchers in round 1 were new to the laboratories. And in round 2, 55% of the applicants were new to the laboratory. In round 1, $6.7 million in vouchers was awarded. And in round 2, $8 million in vouchers was awarded. And you can see on the right a map of where the various companies are that were successful in obtaining small business vouchers. And you can see the labs with whom they're working. If you look at where the submissions came in, you can see that it is roughly in proportion to the budget that's available. And I would encourage you to look closely at the notice of opportunity on the sbb.org webpage to see what funding is available per technology area. But you can see that advanced manufacturing in round 1 had 135 applications, and in round 2, 95. Bioenergy had 35 and 36. Buildings 70 and 67, fuel cells 29 and 17, geothermal 25 and 17, solar 54 and 52, vehicles 50 and 42. We separated the hydro and MHK components of the water program in round 2. So in round 1 there were 18, and then in round 2 there actually were a total of 32 applicants. I'm sorry, there were 20. Yeah, that's right, 18 for both in round 1. And then 32 for both in round 2. And then wind, we saw 31 and 22. And I can tell you that a little less than 10% of the applicants were funded. So it is a highly competitive process. It's important for your request for assistance to be as strong as it can be in order to be successful in obtaining a voucher. I think this is interesting. This is the average age of the business, and you can see that with the note on the bottom, the oldest is 87 years old, but for the most part, these small businesses are less than 10 years old, and in some cases, they're very young. And I point this out because it's important as you look at your business to see if it would be a fit. You don't have to be a well-established company. You don't have to have lots of product on the market. We are looking for companies that could benefit significantly from the capabilities of the lab, and we're really looking to the future rather than the past in terms of what the company will be able to do. And this is a similar look in terms of how big are the companies. If you look at round 1, 348 of the companies that applied had fewer than 10 people. So these can be relatively small enterprises. And then you can see 77 had between 11 and 50, 18 had between 51 and 150, and only 7 had more than 150 employees. And it looks similar in round 2. 300 of the applicants had fewer than 10, 72 between 11 and 49, 13 between 50 and 149, and 5 greater than 150. So the applicants for this program tend to be relatively small, tend to be early stage, and so we hope that you'll feel that this is something that is accessible for your company. Also interesting to look at where the companies that applied are in terms of their their product development. And so if you look at the top of the activity, this is basically the TRL chart. And so if you are at a 1, then you're at basic technology research, and then all the way to 9, where you have system test, launch, and operations. And if we look at round 1, and we'll start at the bottom, 80% of the requesters had demonstrated feasibility of their technology in the laboratory. So I would say that's probably the entry bar. You need to have, at least at the benchtop level, demonstrated that the technology behind your product concept works. And so you can see in round 2 also 81% had demonstrated. If you look at the next slide, 77% of the requesters had prototypes created and tested. In round 2, 71% prototypes. And I see that there's a discrepancy in this slide. I'm pretty sure that in both cases, this is requesters, not awardees. 52% of the requesters in round 1 had some pilot scale demonstration, 53 in round 2, and then 30% had achieved commercial sales in both round 1 and round 2. So you can see that of the requesters, a third or less actually had commercial sales before they applied for the small business vouchers. Okay, some general observations from round 2. As I mentioned earlier, the selection process is very competitive. As I mentioned, a little less than 10% of the requests for assistance are funded. It is critically important that the application that you provide is well and clearly aligned with one of the technology areas that is listed on this page. And as I mentioned, this is because the program offices that are providing this funding are obligated to ensure that the investment that they make is consistent with the mission of their office. So we need to make sure, you need to make sure as you write your request for assistance that you can draw a very clear line between what you're trying to accomplish and the mission area of the program that you're asking to fund you. In general, and we'll talk a little bit more about the scoring in a few minutes, but we scored on the team qualifications, we scored on the problem definition, and we scored on potential impact. And we found that the team qualifications scored the highest in round 2. We found in general that the problem definition and the impact scored somewhat lower, and the average score actually was very close to the middle of the score. And I think this is important as you plan your request for assistance, that you recognize that the problem definition and the impact are where the differentiation takes place. If those scores tended to be lower on average, and we know that the ones that were selected scored high, that it's important to pay attention to those 2 areas so that you can be among those that are in the upper tier. Okay, let's talk round 3 schedule and logistics. The call for requests for assistance, or the announcement that round 3 was open, took place on October 10, and the deadline for submitting your request for assistance is November 10. So that's coming quickly. So you have until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to submit. I can tell you that to the best of my knowledge, this new system that we have pays close attention to the time at which the call closes. So I don't believe that there will be an opportunity to slip in under the line a few minutes after it closes. I believe it closes when it closes. Is that correct? Yeah, I have confirmation. So it's critically important that you submit well before that 11:59 deadline. I would encourage you, if you can, to submit the day before, just because bad things can happen with the internet connections, and you would hate to call it so close that after putting in the work to prepare it, you miss the deadline. We expect in mid to late January to be able to notify the semifinalists, and we'll talk a little bit more about what it means to be a semifinalist in a minute or two. And then late January, early February, we would expect for the semifinalists to work with laboratory staff that are selected for them to define a statement of work. Those statements of work will then be submitted to the Department of Energy for final selections. We would expect mid to late February 2017 for the finalists to be notified for final award negotiation, and then we expect in March for the small business voucher work to begin. So talk about the stages. These are the names that you may hear tossed around. By hitting submit on your request for assistance, you become an applicant. About the top 10 to 15%, maybe a bit more, will be selected as semifinalists. It probably will actually, I should correct this, will be closer to 20%. And they'll be selected to work with a national laboratory to develop a statement of work. From those semifinalists, finalists will be selected based on the statement of work that is developed with the laboratory, and they will be given the opportunity to do CRADA or TAPA negotiation, and then the awardee will be the company that has actually entered a CRADA or a TAPA. And talk a little bit about these. A CRADA is a cooperative research and development agreement. That is an agreement that enables a private sector entity such as your company to collaborate formally with a national laboratory. So in cases where the company is doing work and the laboratory is doing work, normally the CRADA is the right mechanism for that. Now, there are cases with small business vouchers where the company isn't actually planning to collaborate directly as a part of the R&D, but instead plans to either provide funding or provide equipment or other assets that enable the work. And in that case, a CRADA is not the appropriate vehicle, and instead you would use a Technology Assistance Partnership Agreement. I think that's what that stands for. We call it a TAPA. At least at Oak Ridge, the vast majority of our awardees enter CRADAs. Okay, some thoughts on submitting your request for assistance. The best advice I can give you is carefully read the notice of opportunity. The rules of the road, the requirements and the guidance in that are strictly adhered to, and the easiest way to disqualify is to not follow all of the recommendations and requirements in the notice of opportunity. In particular, look at the specific technology areas and the funding levels, look at the merit review criteria and the weighting, look at the terms and the conditions of the standard agreements. You'll be signing up for reporting requirements. You'll be signing up for a cost share. And I should tell you the cost share in most cases is in kind. That means you pay for your effort to collaborate with the laboratory, but that still is a cost and it's still a commitment. And take a look at the request for assistance template. The other thing I would say is, and here's a link to the notice of opportunity. The other thing I would say to you is to better understand what is meant by the technology areas that are described in this call. I found it useful to go look at the EERE strategic plan and look at how they describe these technologies and what it means to the department when it describes these technology areas. And so as you plan your request for assistance, you might find that to be a useful resource. Okay, eligibility. In order to be eligible, first of all, it's the Small Business Voucher Program, so you need to be a for-profit small business with fewer than 500 employees worldwide. You must be U.S.-based and U.S.-owned, and the request for assistance needs to use unique laboratory capabilities. So it's not going to be productive to request assistance that would reasonably be found in the private sector. So, for example, if you have machining requirements that could be found at a local machine shop, even though a national lab can do that, that wouldn't be an appropriate use of the voucher. As I mentioned earlier, you have to commit to a 20% cost share. That can be in kind. In most cases, it's in kind. Examples of in kind include labor, travel, materials, equipment, etc. Or you can provide cash if that's better for your company. This is important. A federally funded award, such as an SBIR, cannot be used for the cost share. So you have to use non-federal funds for your cost share. And we ask that you commit upfront to enter one of the two predefined non-negotiable agreements. One of the things we found is if you want to put an agreement in place quickly, the best thing you can do to reduce the timeline is to ask the parties to agree up front that they will enter an agreement as defined. And we've worked with the DOE Office of General Counsel to put together what we believe are the most favorable terms for a small business that we can possibly put in place. And you'll find that, for example, you have a built-in option. I believe you actually have a built-in license, non-exclusive license for any technologies that result in this work to ensure that your company will be able to make use of the results. So we've pushed as far as we believe we can, and we ask the companies to agree that they will execute that agreement. And companies that have asked to modify the agreement after the award is made have to date been simply told no, that this is a requirement that you'll sign one of these agreements. You do sign up for reporting. This is a pilot project. What that means is there's a lot of interest in seeing what the impact of having the project or having the program in place is. And so we ask the companies that work with us to be willing to take a call once a year or so and provide some basic data to help us assess the impact of the program. And you have to allow non-proprietary information about your business and the success to be made publicly available. And that's part of our effort to raise awareness of the program so that we can attract other companies in the future. We talked about the standardized agreements. Again, we have the Small Business Voucher Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. I should point out that the same template exactly is used for all of the national labs. And then we have the Technology Assistance Pilot Agreement. That's the TAPA. And as I mentioned, there's a paid-up, royalty-free, non-exclusive license built into both of the agreements. We went with standardized agreements. So first, you would know exactly what you would be signing up for, and then the terms are pre-negotiated, and we were working hard to make the time between notice of award and the ability to start work on your behalf to be as short as possible. A little more detail about the reporting commitments. The Department of Energy has hired a third-party evaluator that will periodically ask for information about the success of the program and the impact. And it'll be gathered through a web survey that's expected to be about 30 minutes of time each year. And we've already talked about the 20% cost share. Again, personnel costs, indirect costs, facilities, administrative costs, etc. And you can include the anticipated time going forward to provide the evaluation data as a part of your cost share. We'll skip this and talk about it a bit in the future. Let's talk about the request for assistance now. The request for assistance actually consists of 4 components. The biggie is the request for assistance Word document, and we'll talk about the outline of that document in a moment. You have only 4 pages, plus you have 3 pages of supporting material that can be added. Those 3 pages include resumes, letters of support, that sort of thing. All of the text describing the planned work and all of the figures should be a part of the 4-page document. If you did submit an application in round 1 and 2, you'll recall that there was a table of information that was gathered on the web page. Well, the new system doesn't have as much flexibility, and so we've loaded up an Excel file which has those very same questions in it, and these will be used to obtain demographic data about the program for the database. And then this is new. We're asking for a summary slide, and I'll show you the template in a moment. But the idea is for you to capture the essence of the request for assistance and some of the basic demographic data in a single slide that can be looked at quickly, so that when we're communicating the details of your proposal to colleagues in the Department of Energy, we'll have that as a tool to kind of quickly describe what you proposed. And then there also is some basic data about your company, name, address, etc., that'll be included in the DOE exchange system. Okay, the Word document, as I mentioned earlier, we're limited to 4 pages, and then you have 3 additional supplementary pages which may be submitted. Resumes and letters of support. Well, this is important because our eyes are not as good as they once were. We ask that you not increase the number of words by reducing the font. So we limit you to an 11-point Times New Roman font. We also ask that you not increase the amount of text you can put down by having the margins 1/8 of an inch wide. So we do require a 1-inch margin. And you'll find more detailed instructions in the template itself, which you can see on the right, which is available on sbb.org and EERE Exchange. So let's talk about what's in that. The first thing is the company overview. And this is where you describe the mission and the vision for your company as it relates to this request for assistance. Now, when we talk about the scoring, actually you won't see company overview as one of the things that are being scored. But my personal experience has been this is kind of like your elevator pitch to capture the imagination of the reviewer very first thing. So my recommendation would be for this not to be a very sober, stodgy facts and figures. This is where you kind of pitch the value proposition and the impact of your company. So it's a place to think carefully about what you write. Hopefully your reviewer will start to read, see your company overview, and decide that they're excited before you even get to the next few sections. The next one is explicitly scored. and this is the problem definition. And this is where you describe the challenge your company faces, and you describe how the assistance that you're requesting will help you overcome that challenge. Now, there are a couple of things that are important here. First of all, there's just the objective description of the project or of the problem, so that the reviewers can look at it and see if they believe that is high impact. But also the skill with which you describe the problem and the skill with which you describe the or the clarity with which you describe how this problem impacts your business communicates to the reviewer that you really understand the problem, and that if the problem is solved, you'll be able to go out and create economic benefit with your company because that problem was solved. So again, I would say be careful and thoughtful in your definition of the problem, because this is where, in addition to describing the kind of work you would like to be done, you communicate that your company understands what it needs to be successful. And then the next one is project impact. This one also is explicitly scored. And here you describe how this project, if it's successful, will contribute to one or more of the DEOE mission areas. And equally importantly, how will this solution to the problem help your company to be successful? And I would say my experience in looking at the reviews has been that the reviewers perhaps care a bit more about the impact that solving this problem will have on your company and on the marketplace. So again, you want to be able to describe as quantitatively as possible. If this problem is solved, then we will have this impact. Perhaps you talk about increases in sales, perhaps you talk about lives touched, but describe in a tangible way what the impact will be for your company and for the market as a result of solving this problem. Describe how the results of the proposed assistance will be used to advance the development of your company's products. Now, here again, I would think about it on two levels. First, you're simply objectively describing what your plan is, but also you're creating credibility for your company, demonstrating that you have a plan in mind for the use of these results. And if this investment is made on your behalf, that your company is poised and ready to take these results and go off and have impact with them. And then describe your team and list the key members of your team, describe their qualifications and experience. It's important on two fronts. One, it gives the reviewers confidence that your company will be able to take these research results and have success with them. It also demonstrates your team's ability to do in-kind work and be an effective collaborator. So look thoughtfully at your description of your team and try to succinctly state the key capabilities and expertise that they have. And remember that you can add resumes and bios as a part of the 3-page appendix that's included in the RFA. And then last, talk about how your company will provide the minimum of 20% cost share. And if you're going to do in-kind cost share, how do you plan to make those contributions? So those are the contents of the written outline, and that is where the vast majority of the input for scoring your RFA comes from. The next one is the additional questions form, and this is more gathering data about your company and about the project, but less about the scoring of the project. And you can see this doesn't list all of them, but we ask for your title, we ask for the first name of the person who wrote it and the last name, the email address, how many people are in your company, have you attracted private investment, etc. And that helps us to get a handle on where the various companies are that are applying for this program in their developmental stage. And then we have the summary slide, and you can see that this is, it asks for a company summary and a problem statement. There's not enough space for you to simply cut and paste, so I would say in those two areas, those are condensed from your request for assistance to kind of capture in as succinctly as you can the essence of your company and your problem statement. It asks if there is a particular national lab that you're interested in working with. That's certainly not a requirement, but if there is a laboratory with whom you have experience and with whom you would like to work, certainly this would be the place to put that. And then some background information. Have you ever worked with the labs before? How many employees do you have? It asks for a list of potential work scope and deliverables. At this stage of the program, actually the statement of work hasn't been written when you submit your request for assistance. So this is best guess time. What do you think would be the likely work scope for this project, and what do you think the likely deliverables will be? And then that can be tuned as the statement of work is developed if you're selected as a semifinalist. And then finally, condensed from your request for assistance is the project impact that you anticipate as a result of completing this work. And then on the lower left hand, find some picture or chart summarizing the technology development. I would say this is marketing time more than engineering time. Look for an attractive picture that kind of captures the essence of your company. This is something that reviewers will be thumbing through, and so spend a little bit of time thinking about the image that you want to use. Okay, let's talk about scoring. The first thing I want to mention is, as I said earlier, alignment with the technology area is very important. We talked about what the 9 technology areas are, and you see that I've given you links to, and by the way, this presentation will be available on the webpage. Links to the Notice of Opportunity and links to the EERE strategic plan. But critically important that when you say that your company, for example, is aligned with fuel cells, when the reviewer reads that, they really can see fuel cells and DOE mission space and fuel cells in your request for assistance. There are 3 areas that are scored. There's the potential for impact, which we've talked about already. That's 33, and of course, these are all really 33 1/3. There's the problem definition, which is 33%, and then team and resources is 33%. And there may from time to time be program policy factors that are kind of baked in at the DOE level. One that's out there now is there is a strong desire to reach out to companies that have never worked with the National Laboratory before. So all things being equal, there will likely be a bit of a bias towards a company that has never worked with the National Laboratory as opposed to a company that has already done a number of projects with the Department of Energy and the National Laboratory. So let's talk potential for impact. Take a look at the mission space, the extent to which solving the stated problem will enable achievement of the goals described in the technology area section of the Notice of Opportunity. Innovation, the extent to which solving the stated problem represents a significant market improvement. And then market impact, the extent to which solving the stated problem will lead to a commercially successful product and company, the adequacy, specificity, and reasonableness of the stated commercial impacts of solving the stated problem, and the extent to which solving this problem will result in a high-value product or solution that transforms the industry. So potential for impact, very high priority. We want to support work that will hopefully in a very visible way improve the state of the technology in the market. The next is the problem definition, the extent to which the applicant discusses and demonstrates an understanding of the key technical and commercial challenges involved in the proposed work. As I said earlier, this goes to your credibility, the extent to which you understand your business and the problems that face your business. And then quality and reasonableness, the extent to which the requester provides a valid technical issue which can be reasonably solved within the budget and scope of this program. So perpetual motion machines would be nice, but that's probably not going to be funded. Team and resources is the third part of the scoring. Again, the capabilities of the team are important, the extent to which the team can address the relevant aspects of the project with a good chance of success, including but not limited to qualifications, expertise, time commitment of people on the team. And then also, do you have the resources to support the proposed work? So that's it on scoring, and that's it on the expected content of the request for assistance. And the rest of this talk is going to walk through the specific nuts and bolts of using the system that we have to submit a request for assistance. So I've mentioned it several times, but our webpage is sbv.org. If you go to that webpage, hopefully you will find lots of information about the technologies and the capabilities of the laboratories and the process for submitting an application. When you're ready to submit your application, the first step is on the right-hand side, click on the button that says Submit Request. And what that will do is take you to this next page in the sbv.org webpage, and you will see 2 links about halfway down that are important. Well, the first is eligibility and checklist. So you want to click on that. to review the eligibility requirements and make sure that your company is indeed eligible. And then you click on this link that's right below it that will take you to the Department of Energy's EERE Exchange online portal. So that'll be where your stepping off point to submit the application. And then you'll notice on the right on this same page, and this is again on the process and timeline page, you can download the notice of opportunity that's specific to round 3. And then you can also download the template for the request for assistance. And you'll also be able to find this and past webinars in that same sidebar. Okay, you've now clicked the button that says EERE Exchange, and you will leave the sbv.org webpage and go to the EERE webpage. And this is actually a listing of all of the funding opportunity announcements that are out there. If you've already registered, then you can skip these steps. Let's assume you haven't. So then on the left-hand side, you'll click on the button where I have click here to register. And then you will identify yourself as an applicant. So click register as applicant. And then up pops this page. And you will see that there are a list of fields that have a little red asterisk. Those are required. You'll notice that in the second part on account information, you'll enter your business email, and that becomes your username. And then you enter a password, and we're all about security, so you need to enter a 15-character password that includes some special symbols. So likely that's not something you always use, so you'll probably need to find a secure place where you can keep that stored. And then there are a series of security questions on the right hand, all of the classic, what was the make of your first car, where did you go to high school, that sort of thing. And then with that, you click the lower right-hand corner to register, and then you will get what I call a long and chatty confirmation email that says, thank you, DOE Exchange Program. So when you get that email, you'll know that you're in. Now you can log in immediately. Once you have submitted it, you'll pop up to this window, and then simply click the login to the site. And up will pop this reminder that you are, in fact, on a federal government website, and so it'll give you a list of rules of the roads, things thou shalt not do. You'll click on the lower left-hand corner, acknowledging that you will toe the line, and that will take you into the funding opportunities listing. And then if it doesn't take you to this page, you'll always have this bar on the left, so click on that, and that will take you to the list of funding opportunities. Now there are two ways to get to the SBV funding opportunity. I kind of like the upper right-hand corner where you have the search and just type the letters SBV. If you click that, I found that it takes you directly there. Or you can actually type the FOA number, and that number is shown here. It's DE-SBV-0000999. And so if you enter that there, it will take you as well. But in either way, you search and you find the announcement, and up pops this. And then to access the FOA, you click on the FOA title, and I have to tell you, I haven't experimented. Probably clicking on the FOA number works as well, but click on one of these guys, and it will take you to the announcement itself. And this is what that looks like, and you will see that you have a brief description of the notice of opportunity, and then you will have a list of important reference documents, and so you want to take a look at those. The first one is the notice of opportunity itself as amended that describes the program and what's specifically being called for. It also provides you with a request for assistance application form, notice of opportunity, additional questions. It gives you the summary slide, and then it gives you the TAPA agreement that you can download and have your attorneys take a look at, and it gives you your CRADA agreements. And then the next section down gives you the required application documents. So I went to the required applications documents, and if you click on these, what will happen is you will download a Word document that is the request for assistance form, and basically is a template that tells you exactly what should be in your request for assistance. One thing I will say, this is from experience, you are scored on the 3 parameters that we discussed earlier, and there is a recommended order for you to put your content into your request for assistance. These reviewers are looking at a number of different proposals, so I would strongly recommend that you put your content in exactly the order that you find in the template that you download, so that when the reviewers are comparing and kind of going back and forth between proposals, they find your best stuff where they expect to find it. And then you'll have the a small business voucher additional questions form. That additional questions form is the Excel spreadsheet that I talked about. So that's a required component. And then we have the summary slide template, which we talked about, and that's also a required component. So if you go to the required application document section and click on those 3 links, then you will one at a time download the documents that are required for your RFA. Then you take those and you fill them out. And we've already talked about how you fill those out. So I'm going to assume now that you've stepped off, written brilliant documents to go for each one, and then you click the Apply button in the upper right-hand corner. Now, when you click Apply, it's going to take you to a page for your request for assistance where you first provide some basic information, and then it's going to assign a number to it. So you enter your project title. You enter the abstract for your request for assistance. You'll note that that's limited to 4,000 characters. You indicate whether this is a resubmission or not. And one thing I can tell you is that's not considered in any way in the scoring of your application. So we're interested in knowing the companies that see the value in this program, and if they didn't quite get a voucher in the first round, that they're willing to take another run at it. But there's certainly no negative implication whatsoever if you're doing a revised or resubmission. And then we talked about the 9 technology areas. In the topic, you have a pull down, and that will take you to the 9 technology areas. Then you describe your organization, where you see organization type. Because this is a small business voucher program, it's really important that you identify yourself as a small business. So that would be business less than 500 employees. You identify your company as the lead organization. So type your company name in lead organization. Now, next one is important. And this is what I've gathered from playing around with the system. In fact, you are going to ultimately sign up for something that will be at least 20% of the total cost of the program. So it's really tempting to put a 20% in that button. But because we don't know who your national lab partner will be at this stage of the game, and we don't know what the contract is going to look like at this stage of the game in terms of how you're going to actually divide up the percent effort, it makes more sense now to fool the system a little bit by entering 100%. If you don't enter 100%, then it will flag you at the end of the application process and tell you that the total has to add up to 100%. So the way you make that work is enter 100% in the lead organization percent effort, knowing that at the end of the day, you'll probably do more like 20-25%. The next one is area of expertise. This is not a statement that your company has this expertise necessarily. This describes the expertise that is required to solve the problem that you're putting in front of the laboratories. And this is a fairly granular list, but you need to go down and pick at least one expertise area, and this will wind up being demographic data that doesn't impact the actual selection process. And then if you have a technology space that can be well described with more than one technology area of expertise, then you have the option to add another one. And then we go to the team members. And this asks you to list each organization that you will be teamed with to perform the proposed research. At this stage of the game, we don't necessarily know which laboratory you will be paired with. So leave it blank. And then after the RFAs are reviewed, then we'll identify the national laboratory with whom you'll partner. So it's tempting to enter your favorite national lab in this organization. I would say that muddies the water for this proposal, and just simply leave that blank. Then you do need to add the people within your organization who are going to be key players. So this bottom right hand, click Add a Key Participant, and then at a minimum, add the technical point of contact for your company. And this is going to be the person who will receive all of the requests for assistance related communications. And by the way, these communications will all be by email. So list the first name, last name, email, and address for your primary point of contact. And at that stage of the game, you're ready to create a full application. So at the bottom of that, you'll see this little button, Create Full Application, and you click on that, and you will get this next page, which tells you what your control number is. And this is worth jotting down, although you also receive an email that thanks you for your or for creating your application and then you will add additional information by clicking this button on the right that says continue with full application submission. So one of the things I found in working through this is the contact information actually requires a business contact as well. And so what you do is you click on contact information, you'll see that your technical point of contact data is there. Add your business contact. When I was doing this, I put the same person in both roles, and I had no problem with that. But it is important in order for this to be accepted to have both types of person identified. So the first thing you do is click the contact information, verify your technical, and then add a business contact. Then you move to the team members. It's not necessary to add anything additionally there, but you want to make sure that it came across accurately and is what you meant to type. Now, if you go to locations of work, add your company's city, state, and zip code and indicate that this is the primary location and indicate that 100% of the work will be done there. Now, we know that actually the work will be performed at a national lab, and we know that there's probably going to be something like an 80-20 split. But at this stage of the game, we don't have the details to put that in. And so to make the system happy, what you do is provide your company's information and enter 100%. Funds and costs. This is an estimate only. We'll develop the details for the semifinalists, and I think I have a look at that. So we click the funds and cost, yes, and this is what that page looks like. For my example, we know that the maximum was $300,000, so for fun I put in $200,000. In order to have a 20% cost share, I said the company will put in $50,000. That makes the total project cost $250,000, again with $50,000 being the company, so $50,000 is 20% of $250,000, which means you meet the cost share requirement. You can certainly say $300,000 and $750,000 for cost share. And you can certainly dial it back. We have done some projects that are $100,000 projects for a little bit less. Think about the scope of what you're able to commit to, and the cost share requirement may be what drives the size of the project. But in any event, you won't be held to this number. The actual cost will be estimated once the researchers and you have a chance to work together to put together a statement of work, and then we'll have the details that will be finalized. So in this case, ballpark, you'll notice that there's a button that says I certify that I reviewed the announcement and this application is eligible for reduced cost share. That's not an option for the small business vouchers, where all of these are in reduced cost share space. So once you have filled this out, click on the right, save and continue. And then this one is interesting and important for the demographics. And we want to enter what is the technology readiness level of the technology that you're looking at now. What is it today? And what do you think the TRL will be at the end of the project? So you follow that link and update that. And then you're ready to upload the files and submit the application. So when you click this link on the right, you will see that there are 3 required uploads. One is the request for assistance. That's the Word document that we talked about, that you downloaded the template. We have the summary slide. That's going to be the PowerPoint template that you have filled out with your company's information. And then you have the additional questions forms, and that's going to be the Excel file that you downloaded. So this is just as it works for any kind of a web interface. You click on Add New File. It'll pop up with a little window that can help you browse around on your computer and find it, and then it will upload it. You have the opportunity to upload new additional files. Please don't do that. If you upload something there, it will just be ignored. So I went through the exercise, and you can see this is what it looks like after you've uploaded, that it will give you the file name and size. It actually doesn't give you size. It'll give you the file name for each of the ones that you uploaded. So when you look at that, that verifies that they're there. Then you click over here after it's true, indicate that you have agreed to the terms and conditions of the FOA, and then you verify or certify that you are authorized to submit on behalf of the small business. So we need X or check marks on both of those, and then you click submit. And when you click submit, one of 2 things will happen. When I did it the first time, I got a page that came back that was red that told me everything that I had done wrong, and you had the opportunity to go back and correct. Or if you're very good, you'll just get a confirmation page. You'll also receive an email notification that it has been submitted. A nice feature of this is, so often you hit submit, and then it immediately occurs to you that there's something you want to change. Well, this actually gives you the ability to do that. So if you hit the edit button, then you have the option to, quote, unsubmit. And so you unsubmit to pull it back out, and then you edit, and then you resubmit. And you can do that as many times as you like prior to the application deadline. You can also identify other people who can come and look at your submission and actually give them permission also to go in and edit on your behalf. So it's a flexible system in terms of your ability to refine your application after you've hit submit for the first time. So that concludes this presentation. Here's a list of points of contact for each of the technology areas, and these folks are standing by, ready and interested in helping you find the best technical person in the National Laboratory to help you meet your business needs. We can go a little bit over, about 10 minutes, and I'm ready to start fielding questions, and I see we have actually 43 of these. Let's see. There we go. Okay, good. First question is entitled Chat Test. We'll skip beyond that. Let's see. What do we have in the way of questions?
Webinar will be.
Okay, the first question, absolutely. The webinar will be placed on the sbv.org webpage. It's probably going to take us a couple of days to convert the file, but then we'll have that up ready to go. Let's see. The notice of opportunity says a 6-page limit, but page 4 says a 4-page limit. So this actually is a 4-page limit. We've rescoped between round 1 and round 2, so we'll need to go and correct that. It is a 4-page limit with the opportunity to add 3 pages of supporting information. Let's see. What is that?
Aside from this application, summary slide, and questionnaire, do we submit the multiple letters of eligibility and commitments?
So not as a part of the initial request for assistance. What's required for the initial request for assistance is just the application itself, the summary slide, and the questionnaire. New applicants are encouraged. Can previous applicants, winners, also apply to round 3? Yes, you can. There is, again, a desire to broaden the footprint of the national laboratories with small businesses. So there will be a little bit of a bias there, but not an overwhelming bias. And certainly if you have applied in the past, and even if you have been a winner in the past, if you have a very compelling application, you're certainly encouraged to apply. Can we have access to a prior round RFA winning submittal? I can't do that. Even though we ask, and this is important, please don't put your proprietary information into your application. Nonetheless, a commitment we have on our side is we're not going to share one company's application with another company. That is still your company's work product, and it has strategic value to your company. So that won't happen. Can a company submit more than one application? You can. You cannot, however, win more than $300,000 in vouchers. And so if you are actually selected for 2 applications, then either we'll have to ensure that the total scope doesn't exceed $300,000 or choose one of the 2. Some documents, reference documents with different names, file size from the ones on sbv.org. I believe sbv.org are the most recent, and I'll check with our communications team and make sure that's the case. And also certainly the ones on Exchange are brand new and would be the current ones. If your technology application applies to more than one technology area, is it a benefit to focus on one area or focus on benefits to 2 or more? I would say let the reality of the situation drive what you do. If your technology does in fact support more than one technology area, then identify more than one technology area. Let's see. So looking for additional questions. Do you need to be connected to a national lab already when submitting the request for assistance? You do not. And in fact, one of the goals of this program is to help you connect to national lab partners that perhaps you weren't aware of. So certainly if there is a national lab partner that you would be very comfortable working with, flag them as the one that you would like to have. Absolutely no impact on the scoring, whether or not you have identified your partner or not. And there have been cases where a company identified one national laboratory, and it was clear that another national lab had better capabilities and resources that would be more impactful for the company, and the voucher was actually awarded to the other laboratory. So no, if you don't know who would be a good fit for you, that certainly shouldn't be an impediment to applying. Okay. Do you estimate letters of support will have significant impact on the competitiveness of an RFA? My personal bias is yes. Again, it's one of several components, but if you have external validation that your technology has the potential to be impactful, and you have somebody writing a letter of support that is likely to have credibility with the reviewer, I think that's a good use of one of those 3 pages that you have. It's also very important that you use at least 2 of those pages to flesh out the credentials of your team, so you've got a bit of a balance there. But my experience has been a letter of support can be a differentiator. Let's see. Certainly the slides will be available after the webinar is over, and it is being recorded. This may be a repeat of an earlier question. Yes, you will be matched with a national laboratory. We will pay close attention to the preferred laboratory, and assuming that there is not another laboratory that has significantly better capabilities, you'll most likely be matched with the laboratory that you select. But that's not guaranteed, and it's not a requirement that you have identified a laboratory in order to make an application. We do expect in FY17 to have 2 rounds. So yes, this will be supported beyond round 3. Are the 4,000 character requirements that you covered related to the number of pages? No, 2 totally separate things. So we ask for an abstract for your request for assistance in the EERE Exchange webpage. And that field has a limit of 4,000 characters. And frankly, there would be no advantage to making your abstract longer. That's just to capture a concise statement of what your project is about, and that abstract isn't even used as a part of the scoring. That's entirely separate from the 4-page limit in the Word document that is the primary basis for evaluating your request for assistance. Does the cost share have to come from the lead organization, or can it come from a collaborator on the project? The requirement is that the cost share be non-federal dollars that are used to support the project. And there have been cases, for example, where states have provided the cost share on behalf of companies, and that's perfectly fine. The one requirement is that the cost share cannot be federal funding from another source. In particular, it can't be an SBIR grant. Can a company submit more than an application? Are affiliates or subsidiaries limited by the 300K cap? Of course, that depends on the specifics. My sense is yes, that small businesses are likely very closely coupled to a subsidiary or an affiliate. So we'd have to look at the details, but my guess is that we would treat those as one company and one set of applications. How do we determine the value of the work performed by the lab? That's frankly a challenge. It's difficult for somebody who's not part of a national laboratory to be able to accurately estimate. It's not required that estimate be created until we get to the semifinalists, where we then, with the laboratory, write the statement of work, and that would include a budget. As a working number, one full-time employee costs in mid-career typically cost on the order of $300,000. So, and that's fully burdened with access to the lab and the materials needed. So that should be about the scope of these projects. If you're envisioning an effort that's going to require 10 full-time employees, then it's probably well beyond the scope of the Small Business Voucher Program. Can you clarify what kind of modeling simulation work would qualify, i.e. what kind of code is considered not viable via national lab sources, and whether the software IP that is developed belong to the lab or the company? Okay, so let's take the second one first. We treat software that is written as a part of a project as data, and under a CRADA, the data that is produced can be protected, which means exclusively used by the company for a period of 5 years, after which it goes into the public domain. So it would not become the long-term property of the company, but you would have that data for a period of 5 years. I would say that the software itself, the details of that, I think we have to get into the specifics. And I would say reach out, please, to the point of contact on this slide for the technical area that you're interested in, and we would need to connect you with the researchers in that space to give you a good answer on what software wouldn't be appropriate. I just made aware of this opportunity about an hour ago, so I've not read the RFA. What's the total time period for the award? These are up to 12-month projects. So, and most of the ones that we've seen are in about a 1-year scope. So that's about 1 FTE and 1 year is kind of the scope. And that seems to be the last of our questions. So I'll give it another moment to see if anything pops up. Otherwise, thank you very much for spending your afternoon with me. Let me know if you have additional questions. I certainly hope that you find this to be a useful program, and we look forward to reviewing your proposals. Thank you very much.